I'm eating it.
Good to see you.
Good seeing you. Exciting. Oh my God.
The bag man. The body man and the bag man. And the photographer.
Jocelyn. Beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. So pleased to meet her. I'll just email her the first time again.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming out tonight and welcome to Zibby's Bookshop. So tonight we have Jocelyn Jones and Claire Fullerton and we're going to be talking about artists. So it's going to be about 30 minutes of conversation followed by Q&A if you all have any questions and then a book signing for the two of them. So whenever you're ready.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm Claire Fullerton. The accent is from Memphis, Tennessee, although I've been in California for 30 years, so let's just get that out of the way. It is my sincere pleasure and privilege to interview Jocelyn. And the reason why is I read the book and was absolutely positively breathless. And I read it with the intention of writing a review, which I do, amongst other things. And so I had a certain eye towards what I was going to pick out to put in the review to let people know what was in the book. And I couldn't even believe it. I had the advanced review copy underlined in about 1,000 places, and I thought, this is ridiculous. Okay, so I'm just going to set it aside and tell you that what's so unique about this book is that Jocelyn found a way to simultaneously handle two subject matters. And the first has to do with the fact that for the last 30 some odd years, she has been, well, she's touted as an acting coach to the stars, which is really attractive. And the other, the storyline that she straddles with it is her own individual method of basically being a decent human being in the world. And it occurred to her a while back that the same tools that she would use to encourage and motivate actors in her class, tried to unique formula to her, she found that they can be applicable to creating a meaningful life as well. And she did a remarkable job on those two storylines. And she wove them in forward momentum all the while on every single page. So I take my hat off to you, Jocelyn. And you know, with that said, that is the essence of the book. And tonight we're hopefully we're going to zero in on exactly what makes it so special. So I think it's best if you just want to start up and perhaps read something from your book.
I was going to read a few little things. Before I read those few little things, I want to talk about Claire a little bit. You know, I like this. It's such a wonderful formula to have someone interview and talk with you about your book. This is an extraordinary writer in her own right. She's a real writer, what I call a real writer. She writes fiction. You know, that's tough. That's tough. So I want to say, I wrote it down because I want to make sure I got it right, what I would say about her. Claire Fullerton hails from perhaps the last generation of Southern gentility in Memphis, Tennessee. She has won multiple awards for her 5 traditionally published books, and she's known for writing compelling, upmarket fiction set in the Deep South. Claire is particularly proficient with Southern family sagas and loves to flush out every nuance of the family dynamic. So actors will love that because her characters are so rich. Her work is lyrical, intelligent, and utterly absorbing. Her voice, as you just heard, blows my mind, is enchanting. I can't stop listening to her talk because we don't have these, in the South now, the accents get homogenized, and this is the real deal. This is something you don't hear very often. So,
With the exception of your husband, who's from Mountain Brook, Alabama.
but he only says paper sack. There's no accent. Really.
All right.
But anyway, this woman is a wonderful writer. Little T is here with us now. There's one of her novels. I don't know which number it is, but she also has Morning Dove, which she reads. So you can get an Audible book and listen to this voice. And, for actors, particularly Audible books, you just dive in. You just enter that world and make your own movie in your head from what you're hearing. It's kind of wonderful.
Here she
Okay.
is teaching again, y'all.
Some of them have been my students. Many of them are my students, and they know that is always the case. Okay, so I'm going to read a couple little things, and then we're going to end with, after we talk a little bit, and I want to read something
Very good.
I've chosen for actors. I believe there is an artist in everyone, and connecting to that creative source will lead you to your heart's desire. I believe the evolution of humanity is the art of consciousness becoming aware of itself. I believe we are far more than a person, we are a presence, and that presence of awareness is available to guide us in our life and art. My dream is to inspire people to contribute to the whole of humanity, each in their own unique way. I believe the most important thing in life and acting is, I'm going to take that again. I believe the most important thing in life is acting on what we know in our own hearts to be true. If I can help others do that a bit more, I will have served a purpose. Here's a few more things I believe from further into the book. I believe art is the expression of a person who thinks for themselves. I believe there's art in everyone. I believe we are a spirit in body having an ingenious game with all this marvelous sensory equipment, and our nature is to grow, expand, and ascend to a higher version of ourselves. I believe in the art of living, and that the simple act of making an egg for breakfast can be elevated to an artful gesture. I'm just going to interject something here. There was an entire chapter on making the egg and the crispy edges. You know how I would talk in class, it has to be just the thing. And, I had to cut, 60 words out. The egg had to go. The editor said the egg has to go. Somebody's going to get involved in that fried egg. I believe we are meant to create our lives with guidance from our higher selves, and we locate that connection by becoming still and turning our attention inward. I believe there is no better way to shift our world toward a more benevolent and unified collection of souls than for each of us to exercise and expand this intimate relationship to the spirit within, thereby living in coherence with our own heart. So I'll save the rest for later.
Okay, well, that was perfect, because I was going to ask her, I'm always interested with every author, what was your aim when you sit down to write this book? Because typically you have a point that you're going to make. Why are you writing this book? What's the intention? With regard to fiction, it's through the power of story. What are you trying to say? And I think every author goes into a work of fiction. Nobody just wings it with a plan. This is nonfiction. And so I'm going to ask you, if you were just to very succinctly, complete stranger were to say, what's the intention of your book? What would your answer be?
Oh, I hate that question.
And yet there it is.
As you described it, it has a bunch of intentions. It has a bunch of things going on. So I didn't want to write another acting book. We have a lot of acting books, and yet I've been an acting teacher for 30 years. And so I thought a lot about, what my purpose as an acting teacher is. And really it was to bring out the best in each actor and to bring out the uniqueness in them and to let them know that they're enough and they have this contribution to make that only they can make. And then I realized that's true for everyone. I want to reach everyone. And then I just started to look and see, can I translate our work? So many of you I see in class. Can I translate this so that someone who maybe wants to be an artist, but it just seems like something too far away, it can help them? Or someone who's just, I think a lot of people are lost. And the pandemic did a lot of interesting things to us. I rather enjoyed it. I got a lot of work done. But a lot of people really, it upended them. And I think a lot of people started thinking like, I don't like what I'm doing. I don't want to do this. I want to do something else. And I do believe there's an artist in everyone. And I do believe that you can be in the moment and make breakfast for a loved one and make it an artful gesture. And so I thought, can I write about that? And then I don't know where the stories from my life came, but I started saying, okay, well, here's the lesson. And then I started thinking, well, where did I learn that lesson? And then this story from my childhood would arrive. And I would go, oh, I'm going to write about that. And that was so much fun.
And it was fascinating because I would definitely not accuse this book of being a memoir. No way. I mean, no way near it. And so it ended up being an unfolding of a case in point to what she was trying to say, which is, and hopefully you can speak a little bit more to this, the tools that you tried to impress upon your legions of acting students are the same tools that you can apply. Like now, you talked about intuition, and you talked a lot about nature, and you talked a lot about asking the questions. One of my favorite parts appears on page 42. When the funniest part, it was like I needed to hear this, and we all do. Going about the business of life, thinking anything, thinking what anything, and she makes a very strong case for staying open and pursue whatever it is as an exploration of discovery. Because if you go into anything thinking that what it is that's there, well, then you're limiting yourself. So if you could just speak a little bit about that, because in terms of creating a role, a character, as well as trying to pursue a goal in life, for instance, becoming an actor.
Right.
The
or
staying
a chef,
open.
Or a singer. We're desperate to know. We're very scared not to know. And it gets us in trouble because we don't listen. If we're scared not knowing, then we want to know. So then we watch Instagram to know things, and we do weird shit to know, and we are influenced by other people's opinions. And a lot of people who studied with me know that I always say, I don't want to be a teacher. I don't like teachers. I got thrown out of every school I ever went to. I don't, and there's a real problem with acting teachers because people look up to them and make them gurus, and they're not. They're just, you're in class, you are it. The work happens there. It doesn't happen. It's nothing about me. You want the work to happen on the student. So, I searched for a definition of art. I mean, really, I looked in a lot of dictionaries and looked at a lot of things for a definition of art. I was going to write a book called Artist. And I couldn't find it. I mean, they would say all kinds of shit, but I couldn't find anything that I really loved. And so I made my own in class one day. I said, this is what I think. I think art is the expression of personal discovery.
Nice.
Because really, what else
Nice.
is it? It's real simple. So then what is the discovery? So when I'm working with actors, they have a series of questions they ask, in order to find themselves in the place, in the role, and to help the writer. And, there are questions like, where does it take place? And how do you feel about this? And what happened the moment before? And how do you feel about that character? So there are lots of questions. I mean, lots and lots and lots of questions. When I looked at those questions, I saw these are the same questions that you need to ask yourself to make a life.
Yes. And
because people are like actors, they're making a life. What do actors do? Actors make lots of life. One life isn't enough for actors. They have to have, hundreds. They need a ton of them. And I think that the reason that we look up to them so much is that they remind us of all of the lifetimes that we've had. They remind us that we're in charge of creating our own life. They create life before our very eyes. And we go, oh my God, if they could do that and it's not even real and I just entered their world, surely I can do a little better creating my own life.
Right.
And creating one life and creating hundreds of lives.
You talk about joy. You talk about the steps to creating joy. Can you speak to that for a little bit?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. I wanted to finish one thing with the I don't know,
Okay.
which is, so we ask ourselves questions and then we come up with an answer. The answer is either something we've heard from someone we're impressed by and we've taken on as our own because we took it into it. Oh, that was really good. Yeah, I think this is the answer. But the real trick to discovery is asking again and asking again and asking again. This is a rehearsal process. And asking until an answer arrives in you that's visceral. Your stomach turns a little, your heart beats a little faster. And you go, oh, you're on to something.
Mm-hmm.
You're on to something. And that's a practice, and you can ask questions. Where do I want to live? What do I remember, I don't know why this came to mind, but Miles and I have lived in our house for quite some time. And we lived there with my dad. And after my dad died, we changed a few things, but you don't want to change a whole lot. Somebody's left, and, so you move things around. And then one day, several years later, we thought, it looks like my grandmother's house. My grandpa's, there's too much old stuff. And so we went to that. If you could have anything that you wanted in terms of a coffee table here, what would it be? And then you look until something is exciting to you. But don't settle for anything. Don't settle for anything that doesn't make your heart beat. Joy. He's not here. So I had a student who I adore who had no joy. You're in charge of your own joy. You're in charge of your own happiness. You have to approach it like your life. You have to say, okay, another question. What things make me really happy? So I gave this, it's in the book, the story. I gave this to a student who was not booking. He had a huge series and that was over, and he was chasing that series, and he booked some other series, but they weren't as good as the big series. He was chasing that around. He'd been through a divorce, and he was chasing women around, and he was drinking a little too much, and he did not look happy, but he still came to class. So we went to tea one day. I took him to tea, and I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, I'm divorced, and I was separated." I said, "Well, are you divorced?" "No, we've been separated for a long time." "Oh, okay. Well, what's going on?" He goes, "Well, her shit's in my house." And I said, "Well, call her up and tell her to get her shit out of your house." And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, you have to get happy. The reason you're not working is that nobody wants the sad guy. Nobody wants the sad girl. Nobody wants the grumpy person. Nobody wants the complainer. So it is your job to lift yourself out of those things. And the way you do it is to go on an exploration for the things that really make you happy, make your heart pound a little faster. And sometimes you have to dig for that. You might have gotten into the habit of being in the blues or, in a certain way or complaining. I'm really working on complaining because, what do I have to complain about, So anyway, long story short, it turned out he did not tell her to take her shit out. He took her out to dinner and he tried to get back together. And she said no. And he said, okay, get your shit out of the house. And then he went further and said, okay, I want you to make a list of things that bring you joy. And so he came back, the next week and said, 10 things that bring you joy. He had one. I said, what is it? He said, Jocelyn, I tried. I really, really tried. I came up with one. I go, what is it? He goes, golf. I go, okay, good. So next week, 5 more. I go, yeah. Look into your childhood. What brought you joy when you were a kid? Did you cook with your grandmother? Did you garden? Did you play basketball, baseball, soccer? Did you, there are these things we did as a kid, and I won the award, and I loved it, and I'm happy. You know what happy is, you can feel it. So he came back the next week, and he had more things, but he had softball. And I said, oh, softball. He goes, yeah, softball. I really like softball. I go, okay, cool. So he joined a softball league. And he started getting happier. And I said, let your hair grow out. I don't know what this short thing is. You're a leading man. You have to have long hair. Leading men don't have spiky short hair. Grow your hair out. Stop fucking all this. Sorry.
This is a literary group, Jocelyn.
Stop sleeping with all those women. And, sure enough, I swear to God, in 6 months, this man booked a huge series, married a woman, met and married a woman, and had a child. That's what joy will bring him, because he started to do the things that lifted his vibration. And you can't, we're all hearing now that, if you have a goal, you have to mirror, live your life exactly as if you already had it, right? Because then the law of attraction will bring this thing to you. But what we don't realize is that the law of attraction really works. So if you're bluesy and complainy and not grateful, which brings you joy, by the way, just making lists of things that you're grateful for will bring you joy. Anyway, if you're all crankety out, then those things are not going to come to you. Actually, things that will help you be cranky, because the universe is trying to help out. Oh, you want to be cranky? Okay, well, here's some stuff that will help that. So, joy is about, really questioning what that means to you and what makes you happy. We deserve to be happy. That's why we're here, to bring joy to ourselves and others.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, with regard to the structure of the book, because I know that this is your first attempt at writing nonfiction, isn't that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So some of the choices that were made in terms of the structure, I assume there are some in the audience who have yet to read the book, but are anxiously going to stand in line over here and buy it. Which there are exercises in it, literally, that shall tell stories, make a case in point, and then follow it by suggesting step-by-step exercises, which I thought was incredibly helpful. Very well organized structure to the book. And what made you decide to present it that way, your book?
Well, I had a very good editor. I had a very bad editor, and then I had a very good editor. The first editor said, "You can't do this." I said, "I'm sorry. This is like a memoir and a self-help book. I mean, you have 2 books here. You have to just do 2 books, Jocelyn. Do an acting book and do it." I said, "That's exactly what I don't want to do." So then the second editor, because I didn't know how to do that structure, I didn't know how to get to, I knew I was not going to leave this book without exercises, because, my students who worked with me know that if you don't give somebody a technique, you're not worth anything as a teacher. You have to give them something they can take and work and play with and explore with and make discoveries with, and then express those discoveries. So, the second editor was a great help. She took the book apart And she's the one, because when I tried to put those at the end of the chapters I was writing, I mean, at first it was like 180 chapter book. I don't know, went on forever. And she kind of got it into 12 chapters and put these things in this chapter, these things in that chapter, and then put the exercises at the end. And I thought it wouldn't be the book without her. And
Right.
you know, maybe you can speak to what a good editor is, but I've never had the experience of a good editor.
Yeah, and it's incredibly user-friendly, so to speak, without feeling like it's some obvious tutorial. Because her life is a very interesting one. All of the stages that have led her to sitting here this afternoon. And so I think it's interesting. Can you tell us about your father?
Oh, Henry.
Okay.
Henry was a really special guy. He was an actor. He was an actor, and it was really not easy for him to be an actor because he came from an old, formal Philadelphia family, Irish Catholic. His father was the head of 2 hospitals, doctor, surgeon. And so they didn't understand artists. You know, it's very brave. Miles comes from a Southern family that doesn't, have a lot of, well, his mother was a poet, but, art, it's a big deal for some people to move into the world. I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to paint. I'm going to be an actor. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be that. It's very brave. And some people have a bigger leap. And Henry had a big leap. But he'd had enough of Philadelphia, and he was a little constricted by Catholicism, and he had gone to a school in Canada. They sent him to a boarding school in Canada where they didn't speak English, and he didn't speak French, and they didn't believe him that he didn't speak French, just like the French, But so he was just utterly lost and wanted out, and discovered, like many actors, that he could make people laugh. And he liked that. He liked making people laugh. So he worked on that a bit. And then he became, a Broadway actor, and he was very successful. And at that time in the 50s, television exploded, and they pulled all those character actors from the stage in New York out to LA. Yeah. Because suddenly they had all these parts, it wasn't they only had those movie stars out here. They didn't have everybody else that
the character actors.
Yeah, the plumbers would come in and fix everything.
Yeah.
So he drifted out here. My brother liked to say, Henry wasn't very good with small children. He didn't really like you until you could talk to him about the theater. Maybe somewhat true. I was terrified of him when I was a child because, I wasn't allowed to watch him on television because he was, in Alfred Hitchcock, he would play the guy who killed his wife and sealed her up in the wall, or the guy who killed his wife and he was as a taxidermist, and the last shot is he's putting the final thing on a horse, and you go, oh dear, wife in the horse. So he was 310 to Yuma, I think he was shot and hung. So I wasn't really allowed to watch very much of what he did, so I found him kind of scary, and he was formal and so formal. But then as a teenager, I became hell on wheels, very pissed off. They shot John Kennedy, and I said, I've had it. I've just fucking had it with all you people. So I became a really angry teenager, and I was acting out, and my mother said, that's it. You're out of here. You're going to live with your father. I've done it enough. I have my new husband. I don't like you very much. Go away. So I came to live with my dad. I was banished.
In California.
Yes, in California. And I was banished, and my father got this house on Topanga Beach. So I was banished to Topanga Beach, which was singularly the hippest place on the entire planet. I mean, this is when Topanga Beach had houses on the beach.
Yeah, on the sand.
And oh man, you wake up in the morning and there'd be these beautiful surfers lined up on the waves waiting for the thing. It's just unbelievable. And my dad really became a father, and he saw me through that, and I do naughty things, and he would remind me, he'd say, if you end up on heroin and in Taiwan with some awful guy, because I had, some bad choices there with the bad boys. If you end up in Taiwan on heroin, I'm going to spend every last dime to come and find you and get you. This is his way of saying,
Yeah.
You have a parent. I'm it. I'm in charge. I love you, and I will talk to you as a human being. And that changed my life.
So what would you attribute the spawning of your spiritual search, so to speak? You weave that into your book as well, as you do nature, and your affinity for trees and how you were influenced, inspired by them. And so I found all of that very interesting. I'm always interested in, anybody. I mean, I assume nobody's got the answers to, existence and what we're doing here, but I do admire all those that ask the questions. And so, have you always been, wired that way, or was your spiritual search what helped guide you to creating the life that you are now leading?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Without that.
Can you tell us how that?
Well, it started really young, so I didn't, when I was so young, I didn't really understand it. It was too natural to me. Like many children, they're still very connected to their higher self and so, when I was a little girl, I really was very lonely. And I also grew up with all these fantastic artists. That was beautiful. They were a little self-involved. And, my mom was a little absent, and kids just don't do well with that. They feel like I don't know what to do with myself. So I would go out into the woods because we lived by the river in the Hudson River Valley, and there were these fantastic woods. We lived on the Palisades, so we had these rocks that are 80 million years old. I mean, these are magnificent rocks. So I would go out in the morning. I would sleep on those rocks. I'd have a little picnic I took with me. I had trees that were my friends. And one day, I was about 6 or 7, I'm not quite sure. And I was walking to school, and I was really feeling sorry for myself about my parents. I didn't get that they liked me very much. And I was a little kid, and I thought, I'm pretty great. I mean, I think I got special stuff. I came here with gifts. I don't get it. Why don't you see me? People want to be seen.
Right.
Why don't you see me? And it came in. It's not like I hear words. It's like a whole concept. It just came in like a concept. We're here. So we're here. So we might have to be enough. I'm like, okay. But a person would be good. Something in this dimension would be good. Otherwise, people are going to think I'm nuts. So it started like that. It was very personal to me. I didn't talk to a lot of people about it. And then, you get a little older and you get these concerns. Like my mother married my best friend's father, so that kind of for me. And they shot Kennedy and Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, and Malcolm X. I mean, they just shot all these people.
Yeah.
And the 60s were really rough, and Vietnam was going on. We have it rough now, but I'm done. The 60s was rough. And then I started, seeking things out spiritually. This book is channeled, and when I taught, it felt like channeled. People go, ESP, or you have second. I go, no. It comes off of the student. You just have to be open to it.
Right.
And you can receive that. And so after doing that for so long, I thought, I do have this kind of connection here. And there are times when the book that it went so fast and was so easy, and then I read it because, when you write a book, you don't write a book. You write 15 books by the time you got the book in your lap. You've gone through it so many times. And there were times I would read it and go, I wrote that? Oh my God, I hope I can live by that.
Well, why don't you read a little bit more from the book?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read this. I'm going to read this thing that I picked for you tonight. And then we might do a little something. How about that? Okay. You are enough. actors strive to be interesting. They're thinking all the time about how to be more marvelous. I love actors. I find them brave, soulful, and spirited. They're stunningly beautiful beings, even when they try too hard at times. Here's the thing I tell them. You are enough. Don't add, don't subtract, just be. You are unique. There is no one else like you. We need your very distinct contribution in order to fulfill a harmony, a vibration, a universal chord. Only when you settle into a relationship with yourself, heart over head, will you come into your own. Only then will you discover your own point of view. Here's what my guides tell me and have asked me to pass on to you. You are spectacular. You are more worthy, able, and divinely inspired than you can possibly imagine. Bands of angels walk with you, encouraging you to stay the course. You are awakening. You are beloved. Breathe into your heart. Put an anchor there. Locate yourself, feet on earth, and look at life from there, head up, heart full, and grateful. Finding yourself in the quiet synergy of breath and heart is a way to locate your soul. And then, I thought we'd do something. I think we're going to do something because we're a group. We're going to do a 2-minute meditation, very, very short meditation. How about that? Close your eyes. Breathe into your heart. I breathe in stillness. Exhale. I breathe out peace. I smile. Inhale. I breathe in stillness. Exhale. I breathe out peace. I smile. Continue. There is a space available to us in stillness, a place balanced on the tip of zero, a sacred gap between thoughts where the mind stands still, and if we wish, we can retrieve what we already know. Breathe into your heart. I breathe in stillness. Exhale. I breathe out peace. I smile. Open your eyes. Hello.
Lovely. I'd like to open the floor for any questions. Anything whatsoever that springs to mind, be it about the book or perhaps Jocelyn's career or aspirations.
Or Memphis.
It's not
Is
talking
it
about
Memphis? Memphis?
It's Memphis.
I'll take you off of that.
I'm curious about how you found your editors and what that process was like.
That's a long story. I was working with a publishing company and they had these editors and the first one, I said, this is not going to work out. And that's just part of my teaching. It was like, no, I know there's a book in here. I want it to be married like this. I used to describe it as a braid, the spiritual, the acting, and the memoir. That it just went like that, which is complicated, And so, somebody guided the right editor to me because. Obviously the first one did not respond to the book, and the second one, she just loved it. Would talk to me, send me notes. Yeah.
So I'm just kind of gathering, and I sort of know that there are so many things that didn't make it into the book.
Yes.
Is there one, maybe not one, but is there something that you miss when you read it that you would share with us?
That's such a great thing you asked that. No, No. And again, it's like channeled. It's like trusting your instincts. I'm really, really a crazy person about that, because if you break that bond, if you have the instinct and you question it or you don't take it up, it will go away and never come back, that great idea. So, and the more you trust your instincts, the more fluid they become when you ask questions, and the more that, intuition and the pounding of the heart. I'm really trying to give you intuition at will, that you can reach that place at will. So no, I went through it at one point, and said I have to cut a certain amount of words out. And so the last pass, I just started going, oh, that could go, and I never looked back. I just ripped them out of there and never looked back. And sometimes I think, maybe I should go read the second to the last draft. And then I think, no, I kind of like the idea that I just remembered today that the egg is gone. And I worked on the egg. Like, you guys know how many times I wrote that environment exercise. And it's in the book. And it's probably the last time I'll write it, but yeah, it takes a little time, but I don't miss anything.
Is there a particular acting style or coach that you fancied when you were younger that kind of guided you in your way, or many?
Many, yeah. When I was younger, I didn't fancy any teachers. I really was looking, but I was also quite critical. And, it's kind of nuts to me that I became a teacher but I did. But I had many teachers. I started with Sandy Meisner. I started with the big guns, Sandy Meisner in New York. He does this repetition exercise. It's not my cup of tea, but Jeff Goldblum just told me he couldn't come tonight, but he was going to be here. But he loves Sandy, and he loves that repetition exercise. It's not for me. I don't like it. Then I studied with Strasberg. Strasberg was a brilliant director, and I like his work a lot. Some of it I don't like. Some of it's indulgent. Then, I had a major teacher, Milton Kitselis. I studied with him for years. I began teaching with Milton at his studio. I had classes, and he was very brilliant. He was a beautiful director, really, really good director, really good teacher. And his legacy really is he left this meat and potatoes technique that's based in questions. It's all based in simple questions that an actor can ask themselves.
Hi. What's in the stew? What's in your stew?
In my stew.
Yeah, you know what's in there.
Yeah,
You know it's
yeah.
carrots. You know it's potatoes. You know it's peas.
Yeah. What's in your stew? So we had a tumultuous relationship. I admired him quite a bit. And so, if anyone, probably Milton, because I like the meat and potatoes and the non-esoteric. I love sensory work, but it was Strasberg. We would do sensory work for 2 hours. We would do sunshine and be, please, God, I'm sweating it. I can't. So I love sensory. I think it's fantastic, but it's simpler. Everything is simpler. I like simple, easy, moving forward. Ask the question, wait for the answer. How do you get that into the scene? Same thing in life.
It sounds like you have your own style,
Well, yes,
melded from a lot of
different
actual
different
experience.
things. Yeah, and I believe what I believe. I put it out there with no. I'm not shy.
Much of it is in the book. Much
Yeah,
of,
much of it's in
much
the
of
book.
her approach to developing a character and just acting in general is very carefully in the
Because
book.
we're developing our own characters as people. We're developing a character. Right? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Today's educational system is, a little bizarre and in trouble in many places. What 3 things would you, if you were brought into a high school,
Yes.
what 3 things would you advise teachers to do? And/or what would you like now, today, after you know all this, to say to all those teachers that turned you away from education?
Well, I don't know what I'd say to those teachers who turned me away. get happier. You know, there were a lot of very unhappy teachers. And you can't learn from somebody who's unhappy. You know, you can't. It's hard enough to learn it. It's really hard. But you know, today's educational system, Joyce, really seriously. Oh my God, this is really a serious problem. So, what I would say, I mean, we're banning books. We're banning okay. So let's not get too far into, because I might explode with the state of education in our country. It's so tragic. What do we have to do? We have to insist. You know, you can't ban books. You can't change history. You have to. This is why I wrote a book to direct people to their own understandings, to the teacher inside them, because everybody knows. We all know what's best. We all know that it's not right to ban books. We all know that this is a country that was based on freedom of speech, not freedom of speech to lie, not freedom of speech to, you know, poison. Okay, I'm gonna back off.
Censor.
I'm more interested in how you would train teachers. What would you help? How would you help teachers who are in the classroom? What would you tell them or guide them to be effective and, you know?
Know your subject, treat each individual student as a person, find their uniqueness. You know, I maybe should work on a book about it, but you know, you have
Class series.
Oh.
And I got on board with that immediately and have been enraptured. I think I've seen the first 8. Are there 12?
16.
There are 16. Can you tell us a little bit about that masterclass series and tell us how to obtain that?
Okay, aren't you?
On my,
She's done this before.
on my day.
She's done this before. I'm looking at how many people were in. I see 2, 3, 4. So we got a half a dozen. Yeah, we got some people who were in that master class. You know, people want me to teach again. I did that for a long time. I wanted to write the book. Now we're promoting the book. But during my absence from teaching, I decided to teach a master class and invited a bunch of people, and you know, we only had space for 16 and they signed up immediately. I mean, within 2 days was like, okay, that's it. And a great group. And we did class pretty much like we do class, but we shot it with 3 cameras. And the cool thing is, and a lot of those people from Miles's class, Miles was a professor at USC and taught film there for quite a while, and brought that film class to the studio at one point. And the number of actors who were in here signed up for it, and a number of those actors became filmmakers and directors, and you know, Carl. I mean, it was so wonderful. So those people from that class, 3 of them, were on cameras. We couldn't rent the equipment because it would cost $8 trillion for insurance when you rent other people's cameras. So we said, okay, fine, we'll buy it. So we took the money that the students put into the class and bought cameras and shot it. And the camera people had been in Miles's class, so everybody spoke the same language, which was really spectacular. And it only took us 3.5 years to edit it. So now it is here and it's on sale, and you can, right now it's on big sale, and you can find it at the JocelynJonesStudio.com, and you can look at previews.
And watch it on your home computer. Couldn't be more
Watch it on your
convenient.
home computer.
At your leisure. It's great.
And
I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Claire's enjoying it. Claire, this is perfect because this is just about the book. Claire discovered that what brings her joy is Shakespeare. And so, along with writing 5 books, she has recently become a Shakespearean actress. And is studying Shakespeare in
It's a love of language, and thank you for mentioning that. And literally, I started with Susan Angelo's Scansion and Rhetoric, that I saw on Facebook, no less, an advertisement for this to Topanga's Theatrica Britannica, the Will Gibbs Theater of Topanga. Just every antenna. So I signed up, a love of language, Shakespeare's rhythm, boom, 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 boom. And it's like I understood it as if I wrote it. I understood the language. And I think that as a novelist, eventually, if one does it long enough, you get to the point where you go to the music. And by that I mean every sentence you need to sing. And I spent a lot of time living in Galway and Connemara, Ireland, and I grew up in the Deep South. And I think that the Scotch Irish pretty much settled the Deep South, and it explains the look of the Southern accent. And so, and while I was living in Ireland, and I've been there like 5 times prior to staying there, but I could understand the Derry accent and the Cork accent and all this because I have a musical ear, because I grew up in the Deep South. And so all of this is to say that, you know, it has to have, to write first person, which I do, it has to have an accessibility. Think. The reader has to know they're being sung to, right? And so that was what I discovered with Shakespeare, and I took the gymnasium from Susan Angelo. I'm going to do it again. I believe it's November. No, excuse me. It starts in November, and in September, ends in November. And then tomorrow at 10 o'clock, y'all ask me what I'm going to be doing tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Here's what I'm going to be doing tomorrow at 10 o'clock. A guy named Peter Frisch is up in Santa Barbara. Eventually, I'm going to drive up there and meet him in person. But for now, I'm not going to leave the comfort of my house. I'm going to be with him for the next 6 weeks, from 10 a.m. to noon, getting his take on Shakespeare. And he claims that his aim is to get right where the text and the sound spawns the emotion. And I'm like, I'm in. So I'm not really clear why I'm doing this, other than it just seems to be. And then my husband was like, you know, you just like decided one day to get involved in this. Like, it just seems like the thing to do, you know. But anyway, that's my Shakespeare.
Impulse, that impulse.
It's
was
exactly
so
what she's talking
strong.
about.
She was like, what? What? But you know, she's a writer, so she knows you don't bypass that impulse. You don't mess with that. That's the joy in your life. That's telling you, go in this direction, run in this direction.
Yeah, and actors and writers, it's the same thing. It's the art of communication and this business of being human. And I'd like to get it right. I know I never will. I'd like to kind of get close to the mark between now and the time I die. And so it's this, there is no there to get to with the arts, with acting, and certainly with writing. And you know, if you don't set some goal, or you know, weigh yourself down, trying to be perfect was something that, you know, eschews perfection. I mean, it's antithetical to what art is. There is no perfection. There's only the exploration and the process. And as a writer and as an actor, which is what Jocelyn says in her book, again and again and again, but in different ways.
Well, and
Yeah.
here's the thing. She had that impulse, and here's the thing. Think of the queens. All the queens. Look at this woman.
Jocelyn. Anybody else have any questions? I know you all are going to just relish this book. I mean, it's the kind of book that, you know, you return to even for like bedside table reading. You know, you pick it up and go through about 5 pages, because it's just a series of, she's making points on life, on art, on letting yourself off the hook towards trying to, you know, achieve being a decent human being. And then the fact that, guess what? You already are one. By virtue of the fact that you're walking the path, you already are one. So I found it to be incredibly optimistic, very optimistically written, and a very encouraging voice. And I love when you get your hands on anything from the Tao Te Ching to, you know, studying Buddhism or anything. You know, you just kind of want to know what people have got to say. You know, you take a little bit from the right and from the left, and you say, you know, you grew up in Catholic schools, whatever your scene was. I think as you mature, you find your own way, your own path, and in your own interpretation. And there is no right way or wrong way, which is what Jocelyn has said, in the book again and again and again. So it's nice to even have this book on my bedside table, just to pick it up and let me just go through about 4 or 5 pages here, because it's incredibly inspirational while being entertaining. And she did a wonderful, wonderful job. And I encourage y'all to get the book and read it. I know you'll love it as I did.
I'm gonna be first in line.
Good. Right up there.
I have one.
You do?
Yes.
What's your name?
Mitch Harrow.
Why do I think you're a rock and roll musician? You look
I
like
was.
that.
No, thank you.
I just like everything about you.
Thank